Hello, everybody. Wanted to provide a quick update on my ongoing USFL franchise with the New Orleans Breakers. We have now gone through 6 weeks, approximately about a third of the season so far, and it's been an up and down season so far for the Breakers. Certainly better than last year. However, we're starting to see some of the same problems this year as we had last year. We're just not scoring enough points and giving up big plays on defense. If you've been following along, we are 3-3, as you can see here. But we are playing in the worst division in football. So we're actually leading the division with a 3-3 record and with negative net points on the season. Perhaps one of the biggest surprises is seeing the Birmingham Stallions at 1-5, sitting at the bottom of our division. Of course, they are the defending conference champions from last year. Just taking a quick look at the overview page here. As you can see, we're 25th in the league in points score, in average points per game. We're averaging about 20.3 points per game. That's good for near the bottom of the league. We're turning the ball over. Our running backs have fumbled 4 times so far this season, which is a pretty high number. Sidney Hart, a promising young running back, only has 39 carries, but he has 2 fumbles. So all of that's just been contributing to not scoring enough points so far this year. Take a look at our games that we've had so far this year. We had a close loss in Milwaukee. Milwaukee Rage, a very good team. They're 5-1 on the year. We lost just by a field goal in that game. If you saw that game, as I do live stream all the Breaker games. We had a narrow victory over Shreveport the next week. And then we went to Birmingham, won 17-6. Against what we thought was a tough Birmingham team, but they don't look so tough this year. Lost a close one at home, 13-10. And then this is, a couple weeks ago, this is where I was actually feeling good about the Breakers until we went to Michigan, and it just was not a good week there as we got blown out by the Panthers. The Breakers just giving up too many big plays here, giving up a big play to Tyreek Hill. That put the Panthers up. It was still a ball game at that point. And then, of course, later on in the game, Breakers still actually in the game here in the third quarter. And, Stroud throws a pick 6. And so that game was pretty emblematic of how the season's been going. Just giving up too many big plays and giving up too many turnovers. And so the Breakers, we did win our last game, however, a close one at home. This one went to overtime where we won 30-27 over the Montreal Machine to get us back to 500 and back to 3-3. Just looking at the standings real quick across the league. Starting in the NFC, that NFC East is always a close division. And as you can see, everybody's packed in within one game there. You have Washington and Philadelphia tied for first. So plenty of season left, and for plenty of time for things to sort themselves out there. In the NFC North, Milwaukee and Chicago have been doing pretty well. They're both on 4-game winning streaks. And the Breakers actually play the Chicago Blitz next week. That's going to be a very tough game. But Milwaukee and Chicago are certainly standing out so far out of the NFC North. And we already mentioned the NFC South, worst division in football. Breakers are actually 2-0 in the division so far this year. They have a game up on Shreveport. And, of course, Birmingham struggling all season long. They won their first game last week. They were 0-5. And they barely beat the Washington Federals. The Federals scored a touchdown late in the game and missed the extra point, giving the Birmingham Stallions a victory. So Birmingham even fortunate to win their last game. And then in the NFC West, the Los Angeles Express, Oakland, and Oklahoma, all three have been doing well this year. The Express are probably the most surprising out of that group, sitting there at 5-1. They're also on a 4-game winning streak. And so they've had an excellent season so far. Over in the AFC, that AFC East, which has always been a tough division since the beginning of this franchise, everybody's bunched up, together pretty closely there, and they've been kind of beating each other up. So I still expect at least a couple of those teams to, jump up in the win-loss columns there. They've been playing each other for the first 6 weeks, so I fully expect Berlin and London especially to get more in the win column there. In the AFC North, you have Pittsburgh with a 1-game lead over Ohio. Pittsburgh was actually started out 4-0, but they've lost their last 2 games. And the biggest surprise, I think, in the entire league is the Memphis Showboats in the AFC South sitting there as the only undefeated team left in the USFL. They're sitting at 6-0. And they're actually led by Deshaun Watson. But it's really their running game that's been carrying them. They lead the USFL in rushing yards per game. And they have Jonathan Taylor as their running back. And so he's averaging 5.8 yards a carry. And that's a pretty big number for over 100 attempts there. And they're actually second in the USFL in points scored per game, thanks to that rushing offense. And Watson hasn't been doing that bad, but he's not a superstar quarterback or anything. But they by far has been the biggest surprise of this season so far. You have Houston not far behind them. Houston, a pretty good team as well, sitting there at 4-2. And then you have the Portland Prowlers, who actually just lost their first game last week. They were 5-0, but they lost their last game to London. So, as I mentioned, a lot of the better teams have been playing each other, it seems like, especially over in the AFC. So, that is Portland's first loss, but they've been having a tremendous year so far as well. One last thing I wanted to go over is the Breakers' upcoming games, because I think especially these next couple of games are really going to tell us how good this team is, because as I mentioned, we have the Chicago Blitz. At least we get them at home. That's going to be a very tough game. And then then the next week we go to Oklahoma and play against Joe Burrow and the Oklahoma Outlaws, who are 4-2. So 2 very tough games upcoming for the Breakers. I'll be happy winning one of those 2 games, honestly. So those next 2 games are going to be very telling on how well we're going to do the remaining of the year. But like I mentioned, at least we're in the worst division in football, so we don't really have to be. I suppose we could still win the division and not be a very good football team. Lots of good games coming up this week. I'll be live streaming 4 of these games, as I've been all year. Of course, I will be live streaming the Chicago and New Orleans game. The Las Vegas Vipers and the Portland Prowlers, that game will be live streamed as well. You also have the Oklahoma Outlaws going to Oakland to face the Oakland Invaders, who are 4-1. That game will also be live streamed. And Ohio at Memphis. We haven't seen Memphis too much on the live streams, but they're 6-0, the only undefeated team remaining in USFL, so I'm going to live stream them. Ohio's been traditionally a tough team, I think, every year of this franchise so far. They're sitting at 3-3, but we'll see if they can pull off the upset. And so those will be the 4 games I'm going to live stream this upcoming week. So hopefully our Breakers can pull out a victory. We actually are a 2.5 point underdog at home, as you can see. So we'll have our work cut out for us, but we'll see what happens. With that, I'm going to end the video. I hope you enjoyed this quick update in the USFL. Be on the lookout for the live streams of all the games. I generally live stream anywhere 3 or 4 times a week. So be on the lookout for that. Be sure and like and subscribe to the video if you enjoy what you're seeing, and I'll see you next time.